This is where the former president was surrounded by Secret Service agents as he was then rushed off of this stage after we heard these popping sounds.
He's on the roof! He's right!
We have people that
right there, right on the roof!
It's unfortunate that there's political violence. That shouldn't happen.
If you listen to her, nothing went wrong and they did a fantastic job. She should have resigned the day of this shooting.
The assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump shook the nation to its core. A sunny July afternoon in Pennsylvania turned into a nightmare as shots rang out, leaving one dead, two critically injured, and a former president grazed by a bullet. It seemed like a freak incident, a terrifying anomaly in an otherwise secure political landscape. But now, weeks later, the story has taken a far darker turn. FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony before Congress has unveiled a web of oversights, missteps, and bewildering security lapses that led to that fateful moment. And at the center of this storm stands Kimberly Cheatle, Director of the Secret Service, whose testimony has raised more questions than answers. What you're about to hear isn't just a tale of a lone gunman and a close call. It's a chilling expose of systemic failures, missed opportunities, and a security apparatus that seems to have dropped the ball at every turn. The truth behind the Trump assassination attempt is far more complicated and far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Let's rewind to July 13th, 2024. The sun was setting over Butler, Pennsylvania, casting long shadows across the fairgrounds where former President Donald Trump was holding a campaign rally. The air was thick with anticipation, and the crowd was electric with energy. Nobody could have guessed that in mere minutes, this scene of political fervor would transform into a nightmare that would haunt the nation for weeks to come.
I think that is insane.
This is terrible. Our whole country is just like, I mean, how much farther apart can we, fall?
Now, if you've never been to a political rally before, let's make one thing clear from the start. The security at these events is usually tighter than a drum. You've got your local law enforcement, private security teams, and of course, the creme de la creme, the United States Secret Service. These are the guys who are supposed to be 10 steps ahead of any potential threat, the ones who stand between our leaders and those who wish them harm. On paper, it looked like business as usual. Multiple security perimeters, metal detectors at every entrance, snipers positioned on nearby rooftops, the whole 9 yards. But as we now know, something went terribly, catastrophically wrong that day.
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
At approximately 6:11 p.m., just as Trump was hitting his stride in his speech, the unthinkable happened. Shots pierced the air, cutting through the cheers of the crowd. In the chaos that followed, one person lay dead, 2 more critically injured, and the former president himself had been grazed by a bullet. The shooter, later identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, had somehow managed to position himself on the roof of a building about 400 feet from the stage.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Where? Right there, you see him? He's laying down, you see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
Thomas Crooks managed to fire off 8 rounds before a Secret Service sniper finally took him out. But here's where things start to get really unsettling. According to FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony, Crooks wasn't exactly trying to stay under the radar. In fact, he'd been spotted multiple times before he opened fire.
It appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area for about 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away.
Let that sink in for a moment. 2 hours before he attempted to take the life of a former president, this guy was flying a drone around the area, and apparently, not a single person in charge of security thought that was worth investigating. It's the kind of oversight that makes you question everything you thought you knew about event security. But it gets worse.
We think, but we do not know, so again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that.
Now, it doesn't really take a security expert to know that someone live streaming footage of a high-profile political event should raise some red flags. The fact that it didn't is, quite frankly, mind-boggling.
First and foremost, the assassination attempt on the former president, Donald Trump, last night It was absolutely unacceptable.
And here's where it goes from concerning to downright infuriating. According to reports that have come to light, a local sniper team actually took photos of crooks and sent them to the Secret Service command. This was before the shooting started. Let me repeat that. They had photos of the guy, and still, nothing was done. But the most chilling part of this whole ordeal, just 2 minutes before the shooting began, rally attendees were frantically trying to alert law enforcement. There's video footage of people pointing and shouting, desperately trying to get someone, anyone, to take action against the man with a gun on the roof.
Yeah, look, there he is.
Because we have millions and millions
Officer.
of people.
He's
We
on
have
the roof. He's
drug dealers. We have people that
Right
should not be
here, right on the roof.
When you watch the footage, you just can't help but feel a mix of horror and disbelief. How could this happen? How could a man with a gun, who'd been spotted multiple times, who'd been flying a drone around, who people were literally screaming about, how could he manage to get off 8 shots at a former president of the United States? It's a question that Kimberly Cheatle, the director of the Secret Service, has been struggling to answer. Her testimony before Congress was, to put it mildly, less than reassuring.
Ma'am, that doesn't look like suspicious behavior. That looks like threatening behavior to me. And the rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
I can tell you, as I stated earlier, sir, that the moment that the shift surrounding the president were aware of an actual threat.
An actual threat? A man on a roof with a gun is about as actual as a threat gets.
That's a threat. Right there. The guy's on the roof and everybody's yelling at him.
Yes.
And directing the officer's attention to him.
The fact that the Secret Service didn't see it that way, that they didn't pause the rally or get Trump off the stage, it's a failure of such magnitude that it's hard to wrap your head around. And here's the thing, as people started looking deeper into how these events unfolded, they found themselves grappling with one disturbing question. Was this just a series of unfortunate oversights, or is there something more sinister at play? Were key personnel asleep at the wheel, or were they actually deliberately looking the other way? These are the questions that can keep you up at night, and they're the questions we need to keep asking as we continue to unravel this troubling story. Because one thing's for certain, what happened that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, wasn't just a random act of violence. It was a catastrophic failure of the very systems designed to prevent such tragedies. As we delve deeper into the FBI's investigation and the aftermath of this near tragedy, keep these questions in mind, because the more we learn, the clearer it becomes that the truth behind the Trump assassination attempt is far more complex and far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. As the dust settled on that chaotic day in Butler, the FBI swung into action. Their mission? To uncover how a 20-year-old with a rifle managed to get within shooting distance of a former president. And what they found in the weeks since has been nothing short of shocking. Let's start with the shooter himself, Thomas Matthew Crooks. On the surface, he seemed like an unlikely candidate, a recent high school graduate working in a nursing home kitchen. Not exactly the profile of a hardened criminal, right? But as FBI Director Christopher Wray revealed in his testimony, there was more to Crooks than met the eye. Wray's words paint a picture of a determined and resourceful individual.
We now believe that the subject climbed onto the roof using some mechanical equipment on the ground and vertical piping on the side of the AGR building. In other words, we do not believe he used a ladder to get up there.
The idea that someone could scale a building in broad daylight carrying a rifle without anyone noticing is almost unbelievable. Yet, that's exactly what happened. But here's where it gets really chilling. The FBI's investigation revealed that Crooks had been meticulously planning this attack. Wray dropped this bombshell during his testimony.
On July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, "How far away was Oswald from Kennedy?"
Now, if this doesn't send chills down your spine, nothing will. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment act. This was a calculated, premeditated attempt to recreate one of the most infamous political tragedies in American history. The FBI's investigation also revealed that Crooks had visited the rally site multiple times in the days leading up to the event. He spent about 20 minutes there a week before, then came back on the morning of the rally for about 70 minutes. This is classic reconnaissance behavior. He was casing the joint, plain and simple. And yet, somehow, this didn't raise any red flags with security personnel. But perhaps the most disturbing revelation came when Wray discussed the explosives found in Crook's possession.
We've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely.
Think about it for a second. Not only did this guy have a gun, but he also had homemade bombs, and he managed to get within striking distance of a former president. But here's the kicker, and this is where things start looking really grim. Despite all of this, the drone flights, the site visits, and worst of all, the explosives, the FBI claims they had no idea who this guy was before July 13th.
We did not have any information about the shooter. He was not in our holdings before the shooting.
How is it possible that someone can do all of this prep work, fly drones around a political rally, climb onto a roof with a gun, and still not be on anyone's radar? Well, the fallout from this failure is just beginning to unfold. The questions are piling up, the answers are in short supply, and people are demanding accountability. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. As we dive deeper into this rabbit hole, it's time to shine a spotlight on the agency at the center of this storm, the United States Secret Service. The testimony of Kimberly Cheatle, the director of the Secret Service, before Congress has left us with more questions than answers, and a growing sense that something is seriously wrong at the heart of this agency. When asked about the multiple times Trump's security detail had requested additional resources only to be turned down, Cheatle's response was strangely vague.
Cannot speak to specific incidents, but I can tell you in general terms, the Secret Service is judicious with their resources based on...
What does some requests mean? How many times? What did they ask for and how many times did you turn them down? Pretty basic questions.
So again, without having all of the details in front of me, sir, what I can tell you is that there are times that there are alternate ways to cover off on that threat.
This lack of specificity in addressing such a crucial issue is alarming. We're talking about the safety of a former president, a man who's still one of the most high-profile political figures in the country, and Kimberly Cheatle is basically hiding behind rigid protocol. But it gets worse. The Secret Service's failures in this incident are numerous and significant. They missed a man flying a drone over the area. They ignored reports of a suspicious individual on a roof. They failed to act, even when people were alerting them about a man with a gun. At every turn, at every opportunity to prevent this tragedy, they dropped the ball. And now, weeks later, the best they can offer is vague assurances and promises to examine protocols. It's not just inadequate, it's a stark indication of deep-rooted issues within the agency. One of the most troubling aspects of this incident is the apparent lack of communication between different security elements.
We were supposed to get a face-to-face briefing with the Secret Service snipers whenever they arrived, and that never happened.
The local SWAT team had even taken photos of the shooter and sent them to the Secret Service command. Yet, somehow, this information didn't lead to any action being taken.
We had a text group between the local snipers that were on scene. I had sent those pictures out to that group and advised them of what I noticed and what I'd seen.
This breakdown in communication and failure to act on crucial intelligence is a damning indictment of the agency's operational procedures. Moreover, the fact that the building where the shooter positioned himself had been identified as a vulnerability days before the rally, yet was left outside the security perimeter, is mind-boggling. It speaks to a level of negligence that's hard to comprehend, let alone excuse.
And we still don't know who's telling the truth, really, because, you know, there's been reports that they were supposed to be on the roof, the local police, but got hot and went inside.
There were two-man counter-sniper teams from the locals that were in that AGR building.
And so at some point they just left?
That I don't have an answer for you on that, Senator.
The Secret Service's failure to properly secure the area around the rally site is another glaring issue. This oversight allowed the shooter to position himself just 400 feet from where Trump was speaking, well within range for a competent shooter with a rifle.
They're not on the roof, and that roof is unsecure at this point. Was it supposed to be secure? Were they originally placed up there? I don't think so.
As we continue to unravel this story, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The Secret Service, as it stands today, is facing a crisis of both competence as well as credibility. The Butler incident has exposed systemic failures that need to be addressed urgently if the agency is to regain the trust of the American people, and the Secret Service Acting Director, Ronald Rowe, seems to think so too.
I've heard your calls for accountability. and I take them very seriously. What I saw made me ashamed. I cannot defend why that roof was not better secured. If this investigation reveals that Secret Service employees violated agency protocols, those employees will be held accountable to our disciplinary process.
The Butler incident has pulled back the curtain on an agency that appears to be stuck in the past, ill-equipped to deal with the realities of modern threats. It's an agency that seems to prioritize procedure over common sense and bureaucracy over adaptability, and in doing so, it has failed in its most fundamental duty, and that is to protect. As we move forward, it's clear that nothing short of a complete overhaul of the Secret Service will suffice. The agency needs new leadership, new protocols, and a new culture, one that values proactivity over reactivity, that prioritizes real security over the appearance of security. The repercussions of the Butler shooting are spreading through the political landscape like shockwaves. The assassination attempt on Trump has thrown the entire election cycle into chaos. Campaign schedules have been upended, security protocols are being frantically rewritten, and there's a palpable sense of fear at political gatherings across the country.
Political disagreements can never, ever be addressed through violence.
And understandably, the whole ordeal, as well as the way it has been handled, has raised some eyebrows, with some people, including Ted Cruz, hinting at a far more sinister reason for the lack of answers, including, perhaps, even a cover-up.
The Secret Service acting director approached this shooting with an effort to stonewall and obfuscate and refuse to answer any questions. If you listen to her, nothing went wrong and they did a fantastic job. She should have resigned the day of this shooting.
This incident has shaken the very foundations of our democratic process. If a former president, someone with the highest level of protection our country can offer, can be shot at a public event, what does that mean for the safety of other political figures? What does it mean for the openness and accessibility that are the hallmarks of American democracy?
It's unfortunate that there's political violence. It shouldn't happen.
The Butler shooting has exposed glaring vulnerabilities in the U.S.'s national security apparatus. It sent a message to the world that America's leaders are vulnerable, potentially emboldening both foreign and domestic threats. Law enforcement agencies across the country are on high alert, bracing for potential copycat attacks. The incident has become a rallying point for extremists of all stripes, with online forums buzzing with chatter about the vulnerabilities exposed in the system. But perhaps the most profound impact of the Butler shooting is on the American psyche itself. The sense of security, the belief that it can't happen here, that's been shattered. The shooting hasn't just exposed vulnerabilities in our security systems. It's exposed a deep-seated lack of trust in U.S. institutions.
Even with all the difference, political difference, he's a human being, and he don't deserve that. So it's crazy how the violence is right now.
The political implications of this incident are far-reaching. It's not just about the immediate security concerns. It's about the very nature of political campaigning in America. How do candidates balance the need for security with the desire to connect with voters? Will we see a retreat from large, open-air rallies to more controlled, indoor events? And if so, what does that mean for the democratic process? There's also the question of how this incident will impact voter behavior. Will fear keep people away from political events? Will it affect turnout on Election Day? These are questions that political strategists and analysts are grappling with, and the answers could reshape the political landscape for years to come. The international ramifications are equally concerning. America's enemies are undoubtedly studying this incident closely, looking for weaknesses they can exploit. The message being sent to the world is clear. America's leaders are vulnerable. This perception could have serious implications for U.S. foreign policy and global standing. On the domestic front, the Butler shooting has reignited debates about gun control and the availability of high-powered rifles. The fact that the shooter was able to legally purchase the weapon used in the attack has led to calls for stricter gun laws. However, as with previous mass shootings, These calls are meeting stiff resistance from rights advocates. The incident has also raised questions about the role of technology in security operations. The shooter's use of a drone to scout the area before the attack has highlighted the need for better countermeasures against unmanned aerial vehicles. It's a stark reminder of how quickly technology can outpace security protocols. And in the realm of law enforcement, the Butler shooting has prompted a re-evaluation of how agencies handle large public events. There's a growing recognition that traditional security measures may no longer be sufficient in an age of long-range weapons and advanced surveillance technology. The Butler shooting is a watershed moment in American political history. How we respond to it will define us as a nation for generations to come. It's a test of our resilience, our ingenuity, and our commitment to democratic ideals. And it's a test we cannot afford to fail. As we wrap up our deep dive into the Butler shooting and its aftermath, we're left with a burning question. Where do we go from here? The failures that led to this near tragedy are clear. The Secret Service dropped the ball repeatedly and catastrophically. The FBI missed crucial warning signs, and our entire system for protecting political figures has been exposed as woefully inadequate. But identifying the problems is the easy part. The real challenge lies in fixing them, and the road ahead is not going to be smooth. The choices they make in the coming months and years will shape the future of U.S. democracy. Will the U.S. rise to the challenge? Will they make the hard choices and difficult changes necessary to prevent another Butler from happening? Or will they fall back into old patterns, hoping that next time they'll just get lucky? Hey, thanks for watching. What's your take on the events that unfolded on July 13th? Make sure to voice your opinion down in the comments section below. And if you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, stay safe.